to the Undergraduate Research Symposium of 2020, and this session on common reading. I'm so pleased you could all be here. Thanks especially to our guests for joining us to listen to our student panelists. Really appreciate you being here and taking time out of your busy lives to support these students. They've been doing and preparing some great work. It happens that both Brooke and Kat took Ethnic Studies 101 with Dr. Lynn Fujiwara and were inspired by the reading of Under the Feet of Jesus this year in that class, and have different approaches to their response to the book, but have some interest in overlapping themes. And let's see, I think everyone on this call knows UO Common Reading pretty well, so I'm not going to talk to you too much about what common reading is at the University of Oregon, beyond a reminder that we're working to always build community among first-year students, among students and their faculty, among peers, and of course that includes staff and ways that we activate research through the Common Reading program, which is part of what we're then celebrating today. We are going to introduce you to the focus of UO Common Reading and the book Under the Feet of Jesus by Helena Viramontes by showing you the video that we used to promote the book this year, because we thought it'd be a nice landing. Rachel and I reviewed it again the other day and thought, you know, this is really accurate for where we're going today. And so it'd be a nice entree to the presentations that Kat and Brooke will be sharing. I think you'll be very pleased to then hear the way in which their work connects to the content of the promotional video. I was going to play some music for you as you came in. Audio decided not to work, you know, it's whatever. And I also want to recognize, so that the students know sort of who's here listening to you today, includes David Vasquez, who was very instrumental in bringing this book to the notice of the Common Reading Committee, and then supporting the efforts of introducing the book throughout campus, especially to faculty, helping lead one of our training sessions for faculty. Cheryl Hartup is here, who is one of the curators at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art on campus, and she and her colleague Danielle Knapp help co-curate what they call the Common Seeing exhibitions in complement to the Common Reading program. So if you were able to visit that exhibition this year, that was really great. So thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, David. And also here, some of you, if you took a FIG, you may know Willow Hamilton from first year program. She's the FIG coordinator, especially for the FIG assistants, and also serves on the Common Reading Selection Committee, so help select the book for next year. And I can't give it away what it is, but we just selected the book for 21-22, so it's very exciting. Let's see, also on here from the Common Reading Selection Committee are Audrey Lucero, Liza Alter, and Rebecca Hanley, very invested faculty and staff on our campus from College of Education, from the law school, and Clark Honors College. And then let's see, and then finally, John, hello. John Arroyo is, believe it or not, Viramontes' cousin. And he joined our faculty this fall and said, wow, what a wonderful way for me to begin my life as a professor on this campus, celebrating my family and the work of this kind of seminal work in Latinx literature and Latinx studies. And So we're very pleased to have John here as this story found in Under the Feet of Jesus conveys the experience of his grandmother found in Petra and his mother, in part at least, found in the character of Estrella. So this is very exciting to have all of you with us. And I see just joining us, welcome Emily Simnett, who is lead faculty and director in the UO composition program. And she taught a course in digital humanities last summer with Under the Feet of Jesus, and her students created some really excellent projects in relationship to the book. And we're excited to share Captain Brooks' projects with you today. So without further ado, I guess we'll show you the video again, as I said, and then have students share their work with you. And from there, we're hoping to really have a nice conversation about anything that you hear from the students and questions that you have for them, anything else along the way. So Rachel, anything that I missed or that we should overview? Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I did the thing. Everyone's got to do it at some point in the session, right? I was just saying everybody's already doing it, being muted unless you're speaking. So that's really it. But welcome, hello. I'm Rachel Bash. I'm an advisor for Pathway Oregon, and really excited to be here. Thanks for.
Yeah, and I should introduce Rachel a little more too, because she has been instrumental in serving on the Undergraduate Research Symposium Committee with a special focus on drawing attention to common reading. And that's been really great. And one of the things that the committee has done this year is to also offer an award for best student presentation, which we're like, well, can we give everyone a presentation or award? But we want to acknowledge that the symposium is celebrating the work of the students, not only through the actual presentations, posters, etc., happening throughout the day, but through this financial recognition of their efforts as well. So here we go. Let me do this. And oh, it's not working quite right. Hang on, one more time. Rachel, let me know if this doesn't work for some reason.
Looks good.
So every year, the U of O gives a free book to freshmen to kind of encourage us all to like read together. And they usually have some sort of important message to take away.
Of course. We are in a very small house and I had to move myself because my partner is in a very big meeting right now. And so the Wi-Fi may be interrupted here. I'm sorry. Are you able to share it, Rachel? Do you know?
Let me see if I can try.
Okay. Sorry, folks. We tested things, I swear, 2 days ago. We were very excited. Is that me?
I don't hear anything. Okay, I've got it. Let me see if I can do it.
Great. Thank you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Can everybody see that okay?
of O gives a free book to freshmen to kind of encourage us all to like read together, and they usually have some sort of important message to take away.
It's really cool to kind of have like this book club feel to conversations. When I talked to some of my friends about the common reading, it was cool to find out that they actually also liked the book and enjoyed the book that we both read over summer.
Under the Feet of Jesus is a novel that asks us to really think about the experiences and lives of migrant farm workers. And I think in many ways this is one of the most powerful things the novel does.
The main character is a 14-year-old girl named Estrella. And what the novel really documents are her struggles during a summer in the early 1990s to make a living, to deal with family matters, and to really figure out how to feed her family and how to persevere in really difficult circumstances.
We often don't think about how intimately we're connected to farm workers and how important they are to all of our lives.
Some of the other aspects in the novel that I think are really important for us to think about are labor justice and farm worker justice. So not just focusing on what it takes to make our food, but the kind of conditions that farm workers labor under, and the really unjust conditions that they have to endure in order to just make a living.
We read this book, as an environmental justice book, and kind of looking at environmental racism from a more multi-dimensional, like intersectional lens.
The majority of fruits and vegetables that we eat here in the United States were picked by hand by farm workers, and so we are very literally consuming pieces of fruit and vegetables that have touched the flesh of farm workers, and yet we very rarely think about the sacrifices and the hardships of their lives. And so the novel really brings us into that world.
The kind of general reaction I get from students is that this is hard work, but by the end of it, they're very much glad that they have read the novel and that they've gotten to think about things, and that they've gotten to sort of think about how an experimental novel can get them to certain forms of knowledge that they may not be able to get to through a kind of more linear narrative.
I think students will gain really different things from the novel depending on what their lives have been. I think the power of literature is that it doesn't tell us all the same story. Students who have labored in the fields are going to read this novel differently than students who've never thought about where their food has come from. And so I don't think you can say there's a universal thing students will get. I think some students will hear resonances of their own lives in the text, and other students will encounter a world they've never even thought about before.
These are issues that, although the novel is more than 20 years old now, are very much present in our contemporary society.
I don't come from a farm worker family, but I think that was able to teach me the multiplicity of society and like to think more ethically and constructively about how we consume, and if that's like the right way to go about it, and like how we can connect gender, class, race, and like citizenship.
Right.
Thank you, Rachel, for taking that on for us. I think that you're going to see a lot of overlap between, you just heard about the important themes in the book and what the students have to share today. I'm going to turn it over to Brooke first to share with us. She really teases out some of the issues related to pesticide health and legal issues for us. So Brooke, are you ready?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
going to share my screen now. Hello, my name is Brooke Maki, and this is my project on migrant farm workers' exposure to pesticides and what is being done legally. When reading Helena Viramontes' book, Under the Feet of Jesus, a particular scenario caused me to feel frustrated and upset at the injustices that many migrant farm workers face. The scenario to which I'm referring is when Alejo gets caught in the orchard that was sprayed with pesticides a week before they were told it would be. Viramontes' description of Alejo's experience in Chapter 2 of the text shows the horror of getting stuck in the fields and getting doused in chemicals. After reading it, I was so disappointed in the treatment and lack of human decency shown to the migrant farm workers that I decided to do some research to educate myself more on what California's government was doing to protect these workers from being exposed to pesticides and the harmful effects they have on the human body. As I started my search for more information, I came across a journal article written by Marian Moses in 1989 that looked at pesticide-related health problems and farm workers. In the article, she has 3 main points. The first point she makes was, quote, migrant and seasonal farm workers are primarily ethnic minorities who are excluded from federal laws that protect other workers. Farm workers live and work under substandard conditions that place them at increased risk of pesticide-related illness, end quote. The second point that Moses makes is that, quote, agriculture uses 80% of all pesticides in the U.S. Handlers who mix, load, and apply pesticides, as well as workers cultivating and harvesting crops sprayed with them, are at risk of acute poisoning or even death from their exposures. Drift and runoff of agricultural pesticides pollute the air, soil, and water, creating additional hazards to workers' families, community residents, and the environment, end quote. The final point that Moses makes was that, quote, chronic effects including cancer in adults and children, adverse reproductive outcomes, delayed neuropathy and neurobehavioral effects are also associated with occupational and environmental exposure to pesticides, end quote. The points that Moses made reinforced my belief that protections against pesticide exposure are needed for farm workers and led me to search for California-specific protections. When I started searching for protections and agencies specific to pesticides, I found the California Department of Pesticide Regulations website and began searching to find more information. From this, I found the Pesticide Safety Information Series, Series A, which focused on agricultural settings. The pamphlet is to be used in order to teach those working in agricultural settings safety when in the presence of pesticides. From this series of pamphlets, I learned that a majority of the responsibility to protect farm workers from pesticide exposure and illnesses resulting from exposure is placed upon the employer. Employers are required to train workers before working in fields where pesticides have been used recently and every year following. This training must be in a language they understand and be performed by a qualified trainer that stays with them throughout the entirety of the training. The pamphlets were incredibly detailed and easy to understand, but brings me to question quite a few things. Some of the largest questions that came to mind was how effective this has been, are employers providing adequate safety equipment and services, and do the farm workers have adequate access to materials to keep clean and stay safe from pesticide exposure? I also learned about Proposition 65, or the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act, and how it requires that California maintains and publishes a list of chemicals that cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm. It also requires that whenever employees are working in treated fields or handling pesticides, that the Pesticide Safety Information Series pamphlets are posted at a central location where workers gather, along with all decontamination facilities. The page also included how this proposition is enforced through civil suits, that they may be initiated by the state attorney general, any district attorney, some city attorneys, or private parties acting in the public interest. After learning all of this information from Moses' article and the California Department of Pesticide Regulations website, I realized that there are state-specific protections in California for farm workers. This research sparked an interest in me to potentially explore further into this issue and find out how well this training program is being used and what the farm workers think or know about both the program and potential hazards of pesticide exposure. I think it would also be interesting to see how knowledgeable those outside the agriculture industry are about this issue and find ways to shine more light onto it. And that was my presentation.
Great, thank you, Brooke. Yes, yay, I love the claps, thank you. We're gonna not do a lot of questions right now. We're going to save most of our questions for both of our panelists. But Brooke, I wonder, because you were saying the other day how this work was inspiring you to learn more. Do you want to talk about that just a little bit further?
Yeah, sure. So normally I don't usually read like these types of books or take an ethnic studies class or classes kind of similar in that like learning environment, just because in the past I've felt like when talking about subjects like these, it can get really confrontational. But when I took this class, I was really thankful to have taken the class because it kind of showed me that there are people who are dealing with a lot of horrible things and are struggling, and made me really thankful for how I grew up and what I grew up with, and kind of just made me really frustrated with how people different from me don't have the same opportunities, and really made me want to learn more about it and kind of dig in to see if there's anything that we are doing to help these people. I think you might be.
I got it.
Muted.
Yeah. Thank you. Think about other questions that you'll want to ask Brooke and or Kat. And I'm going to turn it to Kat right now to share her work, which is an art project that she created in response, particularly to the character of Estrella, but enfolding Estrella's experience into the larger narrative. So, Kat, when you're ready.
Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Can you hear me just fine? Yeah? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to start by thanking the committee. This book has been a wonderful experience. It's a great idea to bring this to the first years and bring a community and critically engage with it. It has been an honor reading this book and finding a lot of feelings with it myself. In Professor Fujiwara's class, as you said, we already read this. We read this book, and there were so many things that we were able to really engage critically and learn so much that I felt really inclined to kind of express that via Estrella's portrait. So without further ado, let me begin to explain. So first things first, I decided to draw Estrella with a sort of vulnerable feeling, a very sad sort of outlook, because that is what I felt throughout the whole book. While we may want to give them, the source of strength, power, or we want to feel that, which I totally find that within Estrella, I also feel that the moments when you're most vulnerable as humans, those are the moments where we really find ourselves. And I definitely saw that with Estrella. Reading all of her internal struggles really opened up my eyes to the sort of life that she's within. So if you focus on her eyes to begin with, I'm going to see if I can zoom in. I tried to draw a constellation within her eyes, and this is sort of a reason why has, for me, primarily two reasons. One of them is because literally her name is Estrella, and therefore that is translated in Spanish as a star. So she is a star. She is meant to shine to the world, and that's what I definitely felt. Like she has so much to give to this world, but at the same time, I drew this constellation because she has dreams and ambitions, and I can see that, I can feel that through the book. But just like how they tell you to reach for the stars, almost in this feeling, it's almost because they're unreachable for her. They're so far away. They're right there, right? They're right there. She feels them. She has them within, but they're difficult to reach. And it's that sort of thing that you agonize with her, wanting almost to help her to find her dreams and her ways of actually doing what she wants in the future, whichever that dreams or ambitions may be. I mean, to almost talk on the vulnerability that she has, I mean, her world kind of ties her into this idea where she needs to become a mother, she needs to work, and she just needs to be exposed to this adult world while her childhood is quite literally taken away from her. This is the world that she was born into and that she kind of has no control over. And with that in mind, I want to go ahead and talk about the meaning of her hair. Throughout the story, Estrella has her hair in a braid. And when I think this was subtle, I maybe this is my interpretation of it, but during some times of arguments or something was going on that was wrong or some sort of thing like that, her hair was just let loose. And while you can argue that it's like, well, you know, sense of freedom or that sort of thing, I believe that that's not what's it. I feel that's a lack of control, that her hair is free, that she can't like put it all together. She has no control over the situation, and therefore, like, even so, her life. And that's why it kind of turns into the fields of the agricultural world, because this, again, was a life that she is inside of and she has no control over. On top of that, I want to talk about how I decided to draw her a little dirty, and her hands as well being all cut and bruised, and well, you can't see it there, but with calluses. I actually have had the pleasure to meet with agricultural workers locally, and it has been very inspiring. Well, I mean, not inspiring, but touching to hear their stories, and to hear the conditions in which they are in, and like just looking at their hands, that tells you so much about what they're going through. And I knew that was an important piece, so I knew I needed to draw that. And if you look as well, the grapes, they signify like the sort of work that she's doing. I mean, she works with grapes at some point, and even talks about the raisin brand Sun Maid, and how she looks all happy and she looks all great. But you know, really, it's all about pain. It's not a good feeling at some point, and the conditions just make it worse. And you'll see it that it's almost wrapped around her, because it ties her. It is almost chaining her to this world of the fields, of agriculture. And now I want to talk a little bit about the background. You know, you can look at it and quite literally say, oh, it's a sunset or it's a sunrise. But I think there's a little more to that. You know, for our community, sometimes, or for many of us, we think of the sun like a good thing. It's like the sun is rising. You know, there's hope, there's happiness. You get pure warm feelings. For my Latin immigrant workers, like this community may not see it like that. When you see the sunrise or the sunset, the warmth and the scorching sun on your back as you work only brings you more, you know, it makes you tired. It's painful, it's scorching, it's uncomfortable, and it's almost like a hellfire. I mean, for us, for me, I know the sun is like a sense of, you know, this is the sun I play in, this is the sun I make picnics in, this is the sun I go to the pool or whatever. For the Latin community, the Latin immigrant community, it's the sun where you work in, and that's the truth. The certain beauty of the sun is taken away, and there's a lot of painful feelings within it. So that is what I wanted to portray in that part. And I'll finish with this, being the sort of wood that she's latching onto. This is to represent the barn. I found it to be very subtle, but if you notice at the beginning of the book, she runs towards the barn, and the barn is all broken down. It's old. It's gonna fall. It's gonna tear apart. It's very dangerous, but she goes to it. She has a sort of connection to it. You know how sometimes in stories you see the one character really like saying, "Oh my gosh, I see myself within that," you know, personified an object or an animal. But for her, it's this barn. And I found that to be so curious because it's so important to her. Throughout the book, there's some mentionings of it. And I mean, even when she, Perfecto, wants to destroy the barn to gain some money for it, she's just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to destroy it. I'm not going to help you. But once Alejo is poisoned through the pesticides, that is where she actually tells Perfecto, I will do this. I will destroy the barn if it means that we can take him, if we can get some money for that. Oh my gosh, that was such a powerful moment of the book. It really struck me because it's almost as if she was giving a part of herself, or giving up a part of herself for the person that she ultimately loved. And the tragedy really is that they have to let Alejo in the hospital, and she has to let him go. And the worst thing about it is you don't know what happens to him, but it's a cruel reality that these people are living within. And then Estrella quite literally finishes the book. I mean, Helena finishes the book with Estrella looking up on the barn and looking up at the sky and looking up at the stars. So I want to leave you with this sort of question that, I mean, what is going to happen to Estrella, and what is going to happen to the barn? That will it be renovated, and will like part of her interior be also like sort of like hopeful? Like it's really up to the reader and to the viewer to figure out what this is. But I feel like Helena's point in making this open-ended, powerful finale is really to push us as a community, as scholars, as anybody who reads this book, to do something about this. I knew that I found so many feelings about empathy and really feeling and understanding Estrella's character and all of her struggles. And I knew that I want to do something for it. It calls us to act upon this, and maybe perhaps not end this, but do something to make a change. And that is what I want to leave you with. I mean, this book right here, not only asks you, like, it shows you or reflects the life of migrant workers. It also leaves you wanting more, almost, to find out what will be the ending and how can you do something to change this or to give a sense of hope. And yeah, that's as a community, I know that I am inclined to do something to help my own Latin community. My parents, my parents are immigrants, and I'm a daughter of immigrants. Well, I do not have any experience in agriculture, kind of like how Brooke said. I do find the need to find out more and to contact my local resources to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. So I love how both of you brought this around to action that this story invited you to take. And I wonder if either of you want to talk about any actions you are taking. We've talked a little bit about maybe some more research. Are you getting involved in any way with other communities or organizations that are acting in ways in which you would like to engage within, I guess, to address some of these kinds of issues? That's open to both of you. So, yeah.
Oh, yes, go for it.
Okay. I think for me, just being more conscious of where like the things that I buy at the store come from, and just being more conscious of all the effort that goes into that, and supporting mainly like companies that are treating the workers who work in these farms ethically and as people. I think that would be something that I could do in my everyday life, and bring more attention to the people around me of like what this subject is and how horrible migrant farm workers are being treated. And like the descriptions from the book really helped me empathize and understand how difficult it is, and just really like made me frustrated and want to bring more attention to it. So I think that the quickest thing, or the closest thing that I could do for me personally, would be to just kind of discuss it with the people around me, and like see if they know anything about it, and kind of bring the knowledge to them, and then hope that they spread it to people around them, and kind of just bring more awareness to the subject.
Yeah. For me, I know that Helena has very much inspired me to do something. Actually, well, before reading the book, I was able to work with migrant children in the migrant education program. The summer before I went into the UVO, and it was just wonderful experience to teach children and to really catch them up into their studies, and get ahead in education. But once reading the book, I also, feel inclined to do so much more. I want to get involved, and I've been trying to. In fact, right now, I am conducting a research, personal, but I wish it to grow in the future, to really understand how undocumented immigrants are going through this pandemic. Everybody is struggling and going through hardships right now. But what of them? What of them who don't even have federal help, or in some cases are just so scared to talk to their community because they fear their like status, and they fear that they're going to be found, or they fear of their job. This week actually I was starting my research, and I was doing some interviews with my local community, and one of them was telling me that he works cutting down trees, and I think in the mountains or in the valleys. There's just so many hardships that leave you with your like mouth open, and you're like, how can I help you? And the worst thing of it all is like, I told him, how is your community helping you? And he's like, no. And I'm like, why? What can we do? Let me get you connected with Downtown Languages, who's really helping a lot. Right? For example, right now, migrant education program, and so on and so forth. And I know that for me, I want to educate my community and tell them that, for example, I'm here for them, and I will let them find resources so that they can find a sense of peace. And I'm sure that if I bring enough awareness, then we can bring on a whole community and a whole army to help, and to really bring some hope into these people's lives, because it's not only about a number, it's about lives.
Thank you both. These are great examples, and you'll probably seeing the gallery view here change. That's because we've had a couple of folks who have other commitments and they've had to step out, but they're leaving you commentary here about your great presentations and reflections. So please see that and know that. And then I want to open the floor to the rest of the group who's here to have conversation with Brooke and Kat. about what they've presented and other ideas that may be stirred for you by their presentation.
Oh, well, I have a comment for both of the presenters. I thought it was really fascinating the way that you presented really different ways of thinking about the book, and that it took you in different directions, which is why I think this is such a great program and why I think reading is so important, reading widely. But I guess one of the questions I had for you in particular, Brooke, was thinking about, so you've kind of focused on the policies around education information for migrant workers related to these issues. But I wonder if you might also be interested in, or have thought about, or found any work related to migrant workers' uptake of that information. That is, how did they interact with that information? Did they feel like that information was widely available to them? Because it's one thing to put up a poster, but it's another thing for the migrant workers to actually understand that information, to engage with it, to feel like it went beyond a policy. So I wonder if you thought at all about that, or interested in that, or if you just have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think I more just focused on like what the program was and not really how the program was taken by those being trained with the pamphlet series. An interesting thing that I learned from it was that if requested, that the employer was required to read the pamphlets in any language that the workers understood, and having like someone who was trained to teach the program present. But I'd be curious to actually go see and be there while one of these training programs was happening, or ask people who have gone through the training programs what their take on it was, and how well they understood everything that was being said to them, or being read to them, or that they read themselves. Because I feel like a lot of times you can have something be read to you, or you can read something without really completely understanding it. I think it would be interesting to go in and kind of see how well the program is actually working from like the migrant farm workers perspective.
Yeah, and also whether it met their needs, right? Because these were developed by a particular organization to meet the needs of these migrant farm workers. But I'm thinking about this with the connection that Kat made to the current situation with COVID-19 in terms of how we meet the needs of marginalized communities, and who identifies what those needs are, and how do we advocate for meeting the needs of these marginalized communities. So I think that was an interesting connection across both of your presentations, was just thinking about like who gets to decide what the issues are, and whose voices do we hear about the issues. So I think that might be an interesting, you know, if you're considering pursuing this work further, Brooke, that might be an interesting area to consider, to think about.
Go ahead, David.
So thank you both for such a wonderful presentations, and really echoing what Audrey and what John have already noted. These are really inspiring and thought-provoking. And I think part of the reason why reading literature matters, right? Because you know, it provides us not just with a common experience of reading, but also spurs us to ethical action, which I really appreciated in both of your presentations. So I have a question. I have sort of a comment, and then a question that I want to ask of both of you, actually. It seems to me that one of the big takeaways that you both got from reading this book was the idea of empathy, and being able to empathize with characters that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily encounter in your everyday lives. And you know, they got you to think about you know, your own consumption, and you know, your own relationships to environmental issues, et cetera. And I think that that's really terrific and important. I wonder a little bit about, and this is the part that is my question, I wonder about what it is about reading a novel that is able to produce that experience. So like, you know, not just what the experience of reading is like, but you know, one thing that really struck me is that your empathy drove you in really different kinds of disciplinary directions, right? So one of you, Brooke, got really interested in policy and that kind of stuff. And then Kat, yours was really creative and about more of a kind of humanities focused approach. So I guess, like what I'm wondering is like, how does a novel help us to do different kinds of work? And what was that experience like for both of you? And then I just have one other thing that I want to say real quick, and then I'll shut up. And that is that, Kat, I think you should send your painting to Viramontes. I think she'd very much like to get that, and she's accessible via email, and I know would love to see it. So so I hope you'll send it to her. And
I'm glad you reiterated that recommendation I made to her the other day.
Really delighted always when people engage with her work, and I think she would very much appreciate having a copy of that. So I'll shut up now, but again, the question is like, what's it like to read this novel, and why does it propel us towards action? And I'm really interested in thinking about more than just the idea of like the emotional response, but like, what is it about the physical act of reading that helps us think together?
For me, this book reminded me a lot of the Maid narrative, written by Catherine Van Warner. That I was exposed to that via the movie The Help, and then from there, with more research before I read the Maid narratives, and I mean it's just so powerful, and I don't know how to not put emotions into this. I mean, it always strikes me to hear people's stories, and it's almost like, I mean, I was actually talking to this with my professor, how is this a short story, is like fictional story, is it like historical fiction? It's like there's always like an overlap, and just these stories are, it really transports me, or really like quite literally makes me the character, and I mean that's what empathy is. So I mean, just that I guess reading this is, I mean, just how these words come to life and really make you reflect on your own life, and I mean ultimately for me wanting to take action or wanting to do something, and I mean sharing that with the rest of the world. I mean, I guess that's my physical take on it. I mean, reading, analyzing, interiorly, and sharing that information to the world, and beyond that, doing something to make a change. I don't know if I quite answered your question, but that's what I got.
That's really terrific. Thank you.
For me, I think the book did a really great job at bringing the subject to me in a way that I could more understand and kind of like get into, because I feel like I have a hard time often with just journal articles and other reading material like that, because it's hard for me to kind of picture that in my mind and really like understand the emotions behind the experiences. And I think with the book and the novel, like presenting the information in that way really made it easy for me to, again, empathize and really understand how hard and like the struggle of dealing with those types of life situations is. And it really made it easier for me to like be more inclined to want to read more and to want to learn more and understand more about the experiences that they had.
Emily, do you have a question?
Yes, and now I'm unmuted. Okay. First of all, thank you both for those really great presentations, and really, I was really engaged by your engagement, and I really appreciate the way that you talked about just really diving into the novel, but also to the communities that the novel was about. And I know, Brooke, you talked about in response to Audrey's question, some ideas about how to connect to the community. And it sounds like, Kat, you have already connected to a more local community. And so my question is for both of you, but to think about if I want to help my students in the future, you want to help other future students make those kinds of connections with the people in the community to build on that empathy that the novel inspires, and then find the people that it represents, and to, you know, so I guess Kat, if you could talk about like how you made that opportunity, or how that opportunity was available to you, and then what kinds of advice or things that would help you, both of you, make better connections to the people. So to bring not just the people reading the novel together, but to bring the university together with the community. So that's sort of my broad area of interest.
Yeah. Well, what I'm doing right now, I had this opportunity because my mom works in the district, and she is a family liaison, so she has connection to all of the newcomers and connects them to resources. Man, she has a really cool job. So I guess that kind of inspired me, plus this book and just everything that was going around. I mean, I am in the migrant education program, and we recently, last Friday, went to take food boxes and bags to the families. And with that, I mean, with their permission, I told them, hey, would you be willing to have me interview you and ask you about how you're going through, so that your community in the future can better help you, and I can act as a resource as well. And what I'm trying to do is trying to gather all of these primary sources, gather all of these interviews and direct responses, kind of like how Audrey, you said it, that what meeting their needs, listening to their voice. That's, I mean, you hit on the dot. I want to hear their voice and know what they need, and how I can help them, you know. And on top of that, when I'm I want this to be known to the university community. So I'm hoping for the next symposium to present my findings and to really inform my fellow peers and my fellow, scholars about what's going on. And the way I would say that, you know, we can approach this, there's various ways. Donating, being conscious, like you said, Brooke, and giving your time. I mean, even the idea, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't even speak Spanish. They speak Hmong, like in Cottage Grove, our Guatemalan community. Okay, bye. And it really gives us an opportunity, if we could, I mean, even not as easy, but trying to learn Spanish too, and trying to in that way connect and have an actual, like, not have a language barrier even, and show that level of trust. And I mean, I know that all of what I'm saying to my people who I'm interviewing is like, there's confidentiality, and it's like, I mean, you're telling us these stories about your struggles, and that's a very hard thing to do. So if there's that level of confidentiality and trust, then you can get far. And you can get far in learning people's experiences. So tell me if I didn't answer a question, but yeah, that's what
I just that was great, and I want to note before we hear from Brooke that I'm teaching a community literacy class this term, and we have actually had a really difficult time connecting with the community because of social distancing. But I would actually love to talk with you more in the future to think about how your work, and some of those things you recommend might be things that I could incorporate into the next time I teach the community literacy course, because, or have you in the future come speak to that course, because all of the things you say are exactly the kinds of things that I'm trying to work with my students, and I think they would be really, really interested. I just wanted to say that, and then Brooke, I'm also really interested to hear from you what you think about, or the challenges or the opportunities for getting out into the community and talking to people.
For me, I think a great way to be kind of like brought into the community would be to like have some form of contact that can go with you, especially since I don't know a lot of, like, I took Italian and French and can't speak very well Italian, like I can't speak those languages very well, but like that doesn't really help me in the case of like migrant farm workers, who a majority of them speak Spanish. I think it would be really helpful to have someone to kind of bring you into that community and be able to like translate and provide the comfort of having someone that they trust, like have that trust kind of be brought on to you to be able to speak with them. And I think it would also be really helpful to maybe have some people who do have these experiences come in and speak live to students, or like speak to students in small groups and then have a discussion further. Because like I took a homelessness in the US, and in that class we had a couple people from Eugene who are homeless or have experienced homelessness come in and talk to us. And I know that having that person-to-person interaction really helps me empathize a lot more beyond just reading a story, and kind of understand and feel very, like, I guess, protective over people viewing them negatively, because they have gone through a lot. And I feel like a lot of people kind of place blanket judgments on groups of people. And I think having that person-to-person interaction with different people from different communities really helps break down that wall and kind of get rid of that blanket judgment and stereotype of people.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I would also mention, Brooke, I don't know if you have seen, so in the comments, this is Rachel, by the way, I am in a black void that has my name on top of it, that Rebecca, before leaving, actually put some resources of some nonprofit organizations, so specifically mentioned the Northwest Justice Project and the Northwest Workers Justice Project, as maybe some resources to look into, so that some nonprofits are doing work that might help further your research. And so those resources are in the chat, so if you want to take a look at those.
And then also in the chat, if you didn't see it, when David Vasquez was thanking you and saying goodbye because he has another meeting, he wanted you to know that he and Sarah Wald, who was one of the other faculty represented in the introductory video that we shared, that they published a book just this past year in which they interviewed Viramontes. And so he's encouraging you to consider reading that. And then I would also note that Sarah Wald has been researching and writing under the feet of Jesus for about the last 20 years. And so she's a wonderful resource as well. Other questions, comments, things from the group that you would like to ask of our panelists?
I have a question, and also, you know, an inspiration from you, Brooke, Kat. Thank you so much for your presentations, and Julie and Rachel. It's just so great, you know, that the book keeps living, right? It's not like 2019, 2020, you know, and it just ends. Kat, this is directed towards you. When you were showing the image, I was really struck by all the different symbols, and it felt to me almost like, you know, a carved wooden saint. And I was thinking about the title, Under the Feet of Jesus, you know? And so anyway, I had to run and grab this catalog, but there's this I don't know if you can kind of see it, but anyway, that's Saint Helena. And then I was like, oh my God, it's Saint Helena for Helena Maria Viramontes, right? But the green, you know, the green cloak and the red, also the colors that you're using, and then just the touching of the wood and all. So I'm kind of, anyway, it's a twofold question, but if you were thinking of any other kind of imagery, you know, as you were making the piece, and also if you thought of perhaps using your talents as an artist to work with the Latinx community in telling their stories through art.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yeah, during the, while I was making the painting, I mean, I could only present so much. And I mean, I also want to leave it up to the viewer to know. But yeah, I think yesterday when I was doing my practice run with my dad's like, why don't you make the connection of the thorns of like Jesus within the grapes? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know if I have enough time. I don't want to like go too deep. So yes, you're right. Yeah. Well, it is part of the barn. I mean, it's just, I mean, art is, I get, what's the quote that says, a photo is worth more than 1,000 words. So there's just so much within it. I mean, yeah, I mean, within the constellation, there's a few other things. Within her hair, creating into the, I'm trying to think off the top of my head where there's some other stuff, but again, I want to leave it up to the viewer to make those connections. But you really touched on the point with the you found me with the getting the sort of cross excuse under the species. And then with my art, honestly, I'll be completely honest too. All of you, I did not think this was really, really good when I give it, and I was like, oh, okay. I was very surprised. So I mean, thank you. I mean, it has inspired me, I guess, to keep going. Perhaps for my own presentation, I could make some portraits or some art reflections on what I'm seeing. Yeah, I guess I'll have to look into that. Bye.
Just double checking what was in the chat there from Emily, and just again, she's reiterating how excited she is for you and what's next. So thank you all for joining us today. Again, I'm having some trouble with my Wi-Fi, so I was going to exit us with some music, but I don't know if that will work successfully. So I'm including the Spotify playlist for you to add to your own track list. I think you'll enjoy it. It's pretty inspiring in a lot of ways. So please feel free to add that to your life today if you would like to. Again, thank you for very inspiring presentations. You've both done really excellent work, and it's wonderful to hear how you're inviting faculty and others to think about their own work in different ways. And I hope that that conversation can continue between you and those connections that have been made today. Definitely keep working, right? You're doing great things. You have great ideas for the next stages and potential steps for your research and or engagement in community or whatever it happens to end up being for you, right? And so please keep doing that and know that we're all here to support you in those efforts. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you again so much, and congratulations, right, on this wonderful work that you're doing, and we appreciate you sharing your work with the larger university community, because again, just a reminder, this session has been recorded and it will be shared out with a wider audience for those who want to participate and learn more. And of course, thanks to all our guests as well. This is very important to have audiences in order to develop further conversation and suggestions for further areas of study and avenues of connection. So we appreciate all of you being here. Any final words, Rachel? Things?
Oh, I think you said it all, and I liked, I think Cheryl, your comment is a really good one to end on, which is like, you know, this isn't, it keeps going. It's not just a common reading for 1920, but keep going, keep doing more, both engaging in really important questions. So yeah, thanks for sharing them with us today.
Great. And then I would just want to call Kat and Brooke your attention. A couple more comments coming in about how inspirational you are, and they loved hearing your approaches, and that you yourselves were inspired by the novel. So keep telling stories, okay? Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. This was a really great conversation to have.
Wonderful. I am so glad. So pleased. So take care, and we hope to see you on campus, but if not, in other sessions like this in the coming future. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.